The following presentation was recorded live in Las Vegas, Nevada for the 27th Annual International Association of Square Dance Callers.
This session is entitled Marketing 101. Like you're back at school. One of the goals of this session will not only be to outline our marketing plan as we have it at this time, and we want you to know that marketing is somewhat of a dynamic plan, and it does fluctuate as we gain more information and as we find out more about ourselves and about our image and different ways that we can work this. We've also had another offer. As many of you know, there's quite a bit of enthusiasm for marketing square dancing, for taking a professional approach to this project, and because of that, we've had quite a few exciting offers and projects that are on the docket to raise additional funds. And we've just had an interesting offer, and I'll take our chairman of our foundation fundraising committee, Doug, why don't you go ahead and discuss this offer with everyone, because it'll affect us all here at this convention.
Two things, actually. I just had a very, very exciting offer from one of our members who are here at this convention who wishes to remain anonymous at this time. This person has offered to match any donations received at this convention up to $10,000. So, we have several ways that you can donate to the foundation. Of course, we'll just love for you to walk up and hand us a check. We'll take that. You can enter one of the drawings for either the decals. Or we will have the forms available to enter the drawing for the records, the free records for a year, which also includes a second prize of a new microphone and cord, or cash equivalents to those prizes. So we really need to raise at least $10,000. Okay? I'll be coming by later on and seeing each and every one of you. And we know where you live. So, also, from American Square Dance Magazine, for each subscription sold to American Square Dance Magazine, they will donate $2.50 to the foundation. We're going to try to come up with some subscription forms, and we're going to ask that all of you take some of these forms, or we'll make them available to you, and you can take them back to your clubs and local dances and try to sell these, because every one we sell will gain $2.50 to the foundation. So, we need your help. Dig deep, guys. Thank you.
We're excited about this plan, and want to thank Ed and Pat Juari from American Square Dance Magazine for that offer. And it gives us a good opportunity to tie our dancers into the information that is being disseminated about square dancing. It's a great magazine. It really happens to be one of our our only national magazine. And so I think anything we can do to promote that and keep the information flowing is a great help. If Jim Hensley's in the house, Jim, come on, work your way to the front, and we'll get you started, okay? Jim began a little bit this morning to explain the initial market research that was done this year. Now, we are aware of various market research projects that have been done over the last 10 years and are still in the process of trying to pick up that information. We have summaries of studies that were done. There is some research that we'd love to get our hands out of Australia. Most recently, we have a one-page summary of that information, but if anybody has a line on where we can get the particulars of that study, we would love to have it. We've got a summary of the North Carolina Callers Association and their study. Any particulars on that, we'd love to have that too, okay? We debated and wordsmithed a very short presentation of how this plan would unfold. We felt that to keep it simple would probably be in the best interests of everybody for disseminating information. And this plan was named the Phoenix Plan. The idea being behind the Phoenix Plan is that it is a new beginning. And we feel like this marketing plan can be a new beginning for square dancing. We're excited about it. We think it has a tremendous amount of potential. We, in the past, have always looked for a quick fix. What can we do right now to fix this tomorrow? And most of us on the Board of Governors for several years have believed that there just is not a possible way to turn this thing around overnight, that we have to stand back, we have to look at this thing in another whole light and get some professional help to look at how do you market this thing as a recreation product or as a possible service. This is somewhat of a service, a social service, a health benefit service. We need to kind of look at this in a whole different light. And most of the leisure products out there, the recreational products out there, are being marketed this way at this time. And so we feel like if we could take a professional approach, we got a much better chance of this happening. And here basically is what the Phoenix Plan, A New Beginning, is all about. It says, the plan is a program to market square dancing. It is a recommended plan of action based on research findings arising from brief market studies. The public image of square dancing has become less attractive. At the same time, competition for consumers' leisure and recreation time has noticeably increased. Understanding those factors, the plan will identify the problem areas and offer solutions that would, again, present square dancing as an attractive product or service. The plan consists of 3 phases and recommends incremental steps to realize its potential. Phase 1 will provide market research to define who our prospective dancers are and what it will take to recruit and retain them. It will provide tools and materials to help us understand the problems occurring in the activity and identify the role of the individual dancer and caller in its recovery. The clubs will need to inventory their membership for demographic data as well as learn the details of the plan. CALLERLAB will reorganize its foundation as a universal clearinghouse designed for a two-way exchange of ideas and distribution of resource information for the square dance community. It will establish the foundation as the primary vehicle for implementation of the plan. Phase 2 will provide the foundation to continue its research work. It will utilize the resulting data to help recruit advertising and public relations assistance. It will provide guidance to improve the activity's public image, and this will allow square dancing to appeal to a broader market. This phase seeks to establish funding resources from corporate sponsors, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations. Phase 3 will continue earlier efforts in order to attract appropriate corporate partners as financial and promotional sponsors. By consolidating market research and the dancer demographics gathered from the clubs, the plan will guide the leaders of square dancing in making the necessary changes to the product. The plan will present square dancing as a competitive product in the leisure and recreation market. The plan will unite the various factions of square dancing in a common cause, and this is a critical thing. This more than ever is what makes and is going to break this plan right here, is uniting the various factions of square dancing. We are an incredibly diverse group, and the leadership is spread all over the place. And one of the critical things in this is uniting the various factions of square dancing in a common cause. The resulting consensus will be the critical factor in attracting long-term sponsorship. A new public image of square dancing and a better informed square dance leadership will help to preserve and promote the square dance activity. And that there is the Phoenix Plan. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jim Hensley. You've already met him at the opening session. He is, at this present time, our advisor to the Foundation for the Promotion and Preservation of Square Dancing. He is helping us in the initial stages of this market research plan, and I'll have Jim go into some further detail, a little bit of the research that was initially done, and what is planned for the next phase of that market research. At any time through the presentation, if someone has something to participate, to share with us, there is a floor mic in 2 places. We'd love to have you step up to the mic and share the information, okay? Thank you. Jim?
Sorry, I'm running a little late. I never got out. I'm still eating my breakfast, this slim, fast bar. And, well, you know, that's one of the things that we've got to get ready for, because if, and one of the nice things I just found out, I got buttonholed and never got out to the water fountain. Did you know that square dancing qualifies as a recreation, a health and education substitute for kids who are being studied? What am I trying to say? Study at home? Home study, thank you. Home study kids, and you know that is on a tremendous rise. We have over, I think, 1.5 million kids now being studied, and that they can substitute square dance activities at a club as an acceptable, accredited substitute for going to schools and getting. I didn't know that. I just found this out. Also, that doctors are starting to use square dance as indoor activity substitute for kids with asthma problems. And asthma is on a tremendous increase in this country. So, you know, these are the things that we're not taking advantage of. I mean, the kids got to, and the parents have got to be great to find an alternative and not having their kid have to go to school because he doesn't go there anyway, and just run in there and take a class with people that they're not with and don't know. So these are the positives that we just have to dig out and that we have to apply. One of the things that none of us can solve, because in the final analysis you got to know that it still comes back to that club and their recruitment program. Anything we do is only going to be an aid and to help make their job easier. Ultimately, it's still got to happen at the base level. It's still got to happen there at the club level, because that's the way this activity got set up. It was a great positive in this, in the 50s and 70s, not to have to qualify your club. You could sit down at the church Sunday school class and decide afterwards that you're going to become a square dance club, and that was it. And that was wonderful for the upturn. On the downturn side, it's a disaster, because there's no central organized structure that has any authority to do anything for anyone. And you are a room full of, and that reminds me, I still, every time I come into this place, last time I was here for the first time, and I'm sitting back here with a room like this, and there was a whole series of people called up to as sort of MCs because they were introducing somebody, or they were giving someone awards or something, and I was just so impressed because everybody that came up really knew how to handle themselves. They were very funny, they were very articulate, and I turned to the guy next to me, I said, I can't believe that they've gone through 5 MCs now, and every one of them is just like they were professional. And the guy next to me, who happened to be John Jones, said, well, fella, if you pay attention, that's what we do for a living. And it blew my mind, and then I went on from there to Deborah Barnell and Jones and somebody, I forget who it was having a seminar on singing. And I'm sitting here, it was heavily attended, a room full of people, and she starts to demonstrate something on one of these songs, and the whole room is singing, and they're singing well. And then I suddenly dawned on me what he had said, fella, that's what we do for a living. So as I look out at you, I just want to remind myself of that so that I don't take it. I said something this morning, and I want to emphasize that because it makes another point in the problem area, and that is that you are all individually unique entertainers. And I really don't think that there are many other entertainers can do what you do. It's not just the singing, but it's also having, doing brain chess work at the same time. And this is really, really unique. And it would be impossible to think of you as being successful unless you had very good, strong self-esteem and egos. Okay? Absolutely. No, I mean it. I mean it. I would think that if you had to sit down and list the criteria for the making of a perfect square dance caller, that would have to be very high on the list. I don't know any really low self-esteem callers. Do you? All right. I mean, I can't even imagine getting up in front of an audience and singing, let alone singing and trying to do the chess bit. I just can't even imagine it. I mean, it's like improvising on an instrument. I can never imagine it. But the point I'm making is this same feature that makes you good entertainers also makes it difficult to work because the structure doesn't allow there to be an authoritative factor. So we're going to have to do what we do with that in mind, and you must always remember that, because the best program, the best plan still has to be something that you collectively decide to implement and to support. I've had people this year in a very negative way tell me that they think this activity has to die, callers, before it can be born again. And I told them, if you allow that to happen, it's going to get born the same way, with the same problems. In fact, it won't get born again. But unlike the phoenix bird, of which we've named this plan, it won't rise out of those ashes as a beautiful new creature. And that's why it's important that we don't think that way, and we certainly, I'm telling you right now, you can't allow that to happen. It will not, it cannot and not necessarily happen. And the point I really want us all to understand in making this particular digression is that this is a doable program. And I say that coming from 35, 40 years of experience in marketing. And the reason I say it is not because I happen to have fallen in love with square dancing 2 or 3 years ago. It's because the product is good. This product is excellent. And when I said originally that this was the most politically correct, healthiest social activity in the world today, all those points were extremely important. Being politically correct today as a product characteristic is more important than whether or not the product works. You don't offend anybody. Can you understand what I'm saying? And this is a big, big plus. Big, big plus today. You have nobody, there is no downside to square dancing. That's why, from a purely public relations standpoint, advertising standpoint, promotional standpoint, they'll love you. There'll be no problem changing the public's image of what we have to offer. The problem will be in making sure that we have prepared ourselves to where we can present that product, and that we understand and agree, and enough of us work in concert, in consensus, to make that product work. I mentioned, I think last time, the great story about my father's Oldsmobile campaign, which you probably all remember. And it was a very successful campaign up to a point. They were very successful in getting this younger crowd because that was their targeted market. They drove them into dealerships all over the country. The problem was that the product people and the people who manufacture and the engineers had not bothered to hear the message. So when they drove them into the dealerships, they found their father's Oldsmobile. And this thing did not work on that basis. So what we have to, while we're talking about this way, is to make sure that all of us, this first phase, meaning we find out what they want, we also find out what we've got, are the two parts of this one, okay? And one's just as important than the other. The problems that we have, the very strength that you have, your individuality, the fact that these clubs are individual, we have to turn that into a positive, and we can do that. But part of that means that we do have to, one, accept that this is doable. Everybody has to accept that. And two, that we have to work in consensus in many cases. That may not be what your particular view of this is. And the third element in that thing, and this is really critical in my thinking, and that is that we have to not necessarily see that we got to ball all this down and negotiate this down to where we have a product. One a day spent $150 million over the last 15 years developing one a day. That's all you need to take is one a day. The fact of the matter is, it probably still is, but our perception is that we need a whole line of herbs and products and vitamins and minerals. And you can just see yourself in that one a day boardroom in which these guys said, what are we going to do? We've spent $150 million convincing the American public that one a day is all you need. And they said, we're going to keep the name, but we're going to have a product line. And one a day has 15 products. It's still one a day. But we don't mind that it's a contradiction of terms. We'll take all 15 of their products. And maybe it's time to look at the fact that square dancing becomes a family of products. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying that you may have to start thinking in terms of that way. Some of you are already doing that. In effect, you've created a kind of your own product. Now, the standards still have to be there. But we have to realize that this market today wants their thing now, and they want it as their thing. Have the hamburger your way is what we've taught a whole generation of people. You can have it your way. The fact that it's basically the same way, they don't know about. They think they're getting it their way. The point I guess I'm making is that when I talked to this swing dance group, and they said, come down a half hour early and learn to be a swing dancer, and I believed them, and I walked in and I did the half hour, and I knew I really wasn't a swing dancer, they made me think I was one for the next hour and a half. The perception is what we're dealing with, folks. There is no truth, there is no reality, it's only the way I am choosing to experience this phenomena. What we have to do is make sure we have the ability to make that perception be what they want to see and hear, and that's what we're talking about. But it is our job then not to make this product one so much as to find out what they'd like to see the product look like and give it to them within the very important control standards and guidelines that CALLERLAB has set up. And I say that not because I'm sitting here under their auspices. When I go to sponsors in a year to 3 years from now and I present a product, I'm going to have everything about you. We're going to know, and not you as an individual, but we're going to know the demographics of square dancing for the first time. I think they're going to be damn good. I think they're going to show that they vote more. You got this, you do the kind of things that the image that they're looking for in that sponsor. And that's going to be important. I forgot the point I was going to make, but I was going to just tie that in. It's called senior moments. You guys wouldn't know about that, would you? I would rather have really questions, because that tells me what we want to know, and we have a limited amount of time. And I would be glad to address, Mike will address. This guy has been my mentor, and the board has been my mentor. I wandered into his class 2.5 years ago, as you know, as a result of having made a comment in a speech I gave for a bunch of businessmen, in which two guys in the back of the room came up afterwards and said, because the comment I made was just a way of making a metaphor. I said, to show that these business cycles are never the same this time around, and that they affect all of our lives, socially and otherwise. I said, in fact, there's a product out there, which is probably the most politically correct, social, healthy activity in the world, and because the leadership doesn't know it's a product, we'll probably lose it in the next 10 years, and another great American tradition will go. And these two guys came up after everybody had left, and they said, and they were madder than hell. They said, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Fact of the matter is, square dancing is never going to die out. It's too good to die out, and if you know so much, why don't you come down and square dance? Well, I did, and he captured me, and so if he's a good resource also here. Any questions from anybody?
Yonachak from Hawaii.
Yeah.
You mentioned uniting various factions of square dancing in a common cause.
Yep.
There is an enormous population, far greater than our Western square dancing, who consider themselves square dancing. We have drawn a little wall around CALLERLAB callers, leaving them on the outside. They have the children, they have the young people, they have the college students, they have the growing families, and they outnumber us at least 10 to 1. Jane Carlson here was telling me she just went to Dance Flurry. There were 5,000 dancers. When was the last time you went to an ordinary dance that had 5,000 dancers? Why have we drawn a line excluding that dance community? Our list now says we start with A, mainstream. What happened to basic? That's a level 2.
Yeah, Mike will address this because he certainly has the background. But I want to say this, because it touches on the same subject. One of the things I feel we have to do is we have to start to look at our bigger picture. When I take this to Ford dealerships in Southern California, as an example, as a sponsor for that area, I'm going to talk, and this is one of the things Legacy said to me, well, we're going to lose all this dress and no, and we don't want to lose any of it. Tradition is part of what we're selling. 200 years of perfect reflection of the American history story is not a bad deal for a product, okay? It's a good deal for a product. And I happen to agree. One of the things we're going to do this year is approach the National Endowment for the Arts. The new incoming director for the National Endowment of the Arts came in last year, and I was just reading his inaugural address 2 days ago on the internet, and this guy is the guy who hands out $500 million every year, okay? For 20 years, he just left the post of being the director of folk art in the museum in Memphis. Is this man oriented to folk art? Fine. Do we see ourselves as folk artists? We better, because I guarantee you, when the grant proposals are going in, you may not even see the word square dancing. You may see folk artists, folk dancers. Well, I don't care what it takes to get $20,000 for a club over here, okay? And so I agree with you that we've lost the sight of the big picture of who we are. You've spawned off round dancing. You spawned off. How many dances have you spun off since you were in Queen Elizabeth's court? Did any of you see Mrs. Edwards? What was it? Miss Brown. Miss Brown. Yeah. How many of you people saw Mrs. Brown, the movie? Jesus, go see it. Get it on a videotape. When people talk about square dancing, have a bad image. People like me. Then say, hey, take that 3 to 5 6-minute segment out of Mrs. Brown and look at it. It's the premier people of the world dancing in one of the premier castles of the world, costumed in some of the premier clothes in the world, and guess what they're doing? Square dancing. They didn't have that name necessarily, but they're 8 people doing the same thing I do, so they must be square dancing. Did they have an image problem in France and in England? Not the least. So the point I'm saying is that we do have to incorporate brothers, sisters in other areas. If nothing more, then see ourselves. Let me just give an example of why it's important that you understand this, in that to get money for a group in Indianapolis that were a dance theater group, we associated them with a building rehabilitation program for which the Eli Lilly Foundation was putting up $1 million. Well, the building people didn't particularly care, but by having us as part of the package, it helped them because we were a traditional dance group. We were a traditional theater company. And we got our $50,000 to help us with that as a part of the big grant that came in to rehab the building. I don't care what we have to look like. We may need to nestle up to some of these folk dancers, round dancers, other type of dancers, of which we have a natural association with anyway. There are two country swing dance clubs in Northern California that belong to a square dance association. I'm going to sneak their demographics in on that association's demographics because I need the youth. Okay, I need to make this thing as young as possible. I wish all swing dance clubs were members of our association, and they should be. So I agree with you. Now let Mike answer the other question. I'm sorry, Mike.
Go ahead. You need an initial comment?
What I was concerned about is we're trying to sell modern Western club square dancing, and you said that club recruitment was necessary for successful square dancing. There's an awful lot of successful square dancing going on that has nothing whatever to do with us or with our clubs. We have put them sort of beyond the pale, outside. Are we considering opening up our own interpretation of square dancing to include them back in again? I go back far enough that when I started square dancing, I was a traditional dancer. And there's still a lot of them out there, more of them than us. What I want to know is how come we're trying to sell modern Western club square dancing when that product has been dwindling lately? Why not try to sell the big picture of square dancing, the whole darn thing?
You know, that's exactly what we have discussed in the marketing discussions that we've had this far. We realize that this activity, this folk art, so as it may be, is a tremendously large group of people, and many of them not involved in specific club dancing. One of the big debates on the board right now involves our mission statement, which we have been revamping now for the last year or so. And one of the big debates in that mission statement has been including the associated dance forms, all of the associated dance forms that somehow encompass this great American dance of ours. And Yoni, since you're the chairman of the Traditional and Contra Committee, that committee there probably has one of the keys to allow us to liaison with that traditional group. There are many in those traditional groups, Country Song and Dance Society and such, that have a bit of a problem with us and our dance form and our sitting down and standardizing this thing completely separate from them. And if there is a way to tie these groups together, we'd sure like to know. And if you have some insight, or anybody that integrates their programs with the traditional programs has a way to be able to tie these groups together from the standpoint of a national arts endowment of the arts, we have a much better chance of funding this entire program if they're included. So we are open to it, and we'd love to have your committee address that. If you could give us some information, that would be helpful. All right? Mike?
Mike Jacobs, Virginia. Continuing on the subject, I went out when we started the activity with the marketing and bought one of those books at Barnes & Noble's, Marketing for Dummies. Let me tell you, it's a real eye-opening experience to read it, and it's very easy to read. But one of the points it makes in it is that retaining customers is a much easier job than going out and attracting new customers. We have to start somewhere in this process. So working through the clubs initially here and doing what we're doing now is a first step in the process. You know, making ourselves healthier is one route to making ourselves more attractive. So the customer retention process is even better and more important than going out and getting new customers right now. It costs more to get new people. Retaining what we got costs much less, and it's a step in the right direction.
I think Mike is right. It's something we have control over here. We understand our group. We are in the best position to know how to retain those customers, but how do we reach out and become inclusive? The other point here is that we are a tremendously diverse group. Even amongst square dance groups itself, there are some problems with this group and that group, and we're very colloquial in that sense. And colloquial. That was close enough. Yes. Anyway, that. The point is that we have to learn a tremendous amount of tolerance. The leadership in this organization has to learn how to get along with each other a heck of a lot more, because that right there is the key to helping dancers get along with each other. We have to work together to make this happen. We're all in the same family. When we realize that, when we all realize we're on the same boat, we'll come a long step forward. Bill?
Thank you very much. Bill Hyman, New Hampshire. First, I'd like to agree with Mike's comments on the retention issue. Retention, as a professional marketing guy, retention is a lot easier than bringing in new customers. It's less expensive and significantly less effort. A two-pronged question. The calling community, particularly CALLERLAB, callers, be they present or not, are a highly motivated, action-oriented, can-do population. By definition, jokes aside this morning, that's really what this population is. There are very few wallflowers in this room. We're a really chatty, marketing, selling kind of group. Before we leave this convention, can we get, either now or at the Wednesday session, a clear, concise, bullet form summary of the actions that are being taken at the EC within this committee as to better definitions of the short-term goals of the study side? I realize we can't fully flesh it out, but as to the study side for the short term, and at least a rough sketch of where we believe the long-term goals might be. We might not know them terribly well structured, but at least a hint. And third, actions that this group can immediately take on Wednesday afternoon or Thursday when they get back to their clubs. Exactly what can they do and how they can work. That would be very helpful. My second point is, and I say this to the dancers that are in the room, the executives of the NEC, general chairman past and present, dance club presidents and dancers who are here to support it, and I don't mean this in a critical way at all, but every caller in this room knows, and you're going to probably shake your heads when I make the following point. It has been my experience over the last 18 years that many, many, many of the problems that are caused by club management attitudes, dancer attitudes. My comment is not an anti-dancer comment at all, but rather, is it not our responsibility in dance leadership, in concert with the dance leadership who is here and are at the National Convention, to figure out ways that we can cooperate together, we can work together, take advantage of all of our national publications, internet resources, meetings that take place, regional, national, and so forth, to really form a working alliance that actually is constructive and helpful. The petty jealousies will kill this industry and activity dead. And I implore those of you from the dancer side of this activity to step forward, take an ever-increasing leadership role on your side, in addition to the responsibilities you've accepted already, to work more closely with the complete calling community, not just CALLERLAB, but the complete calling community, to figure out how we together can forge ahead and really have a long-term viable action plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Talk about ego. I feel pretty stupid. All these wonderful callers, and I'm brand new, just an apprentice. But I'm talking more as a person who has done square dancing. And the talk that you're having about retaining your dancers that are dancing now. We had a small convention just last weekend, 3 excellent callers vying with each other with their choreography. At the end of the convention, of the little festival of which I was a chairman, I had half a dozen different people come to me and say, that was the worst calling I've ever seen in my life, and I won't come next year if you do this again. They want plain vanilla dancing. They want to do what they have done 100 times before and never put their brain in gear. And if this is what they pay for, this is what you've got to give them. They are doing this for fun. They are, most of them, senior citizens. They don't want to go back to school. They want to do what they have been doing. When you start marketing towards a younger generation and give them something that challenges them, that's a different thing. But right now, what you've got is mostly senior citizens, and they want to come and have fun.
All right, well put. Jim?
Jim Mayo, also from New Hampshire. I'd like to go back to Yona's point. In the early days, back in ancient history, when the dinosaurs were alive on the land, we had a number of representatives of the traditional square dance activity in CALLERLAB active, working with it. One by one they went away, and I have many times thought and tried hard to retain the idea that we have in square dancing one of the most flexible recreational activities in the world. It can be all things for all people. It will do that more easily if we recognize that it is a continuous activity, from the one-night stands that some of us do, through the traditional format, which tends to be more like the dancing just described, and on into the club programs where things are more complicated, even to the end of the line in the challenge program for the folks who want to do that. I would love to have us see that as one continuous path that people can enter at any point, move along as far as they wish to go, and find an active program there. So far, we have a big hole between traditional, easy, simple square dancing and the club kind of square dancing that we are very much interested in. If we can close that gap and make it a continuous activity, we can replace the base of our pyramid.
Thank you, Jim.
Scott Zinser, Portland, Oregon. Let me put this thing up a little bit. I have a question. I heard it said that we would make square dancing look like whatever it needs to look like in order to appeal to the public. Isn't that sort of the gist of what I heard? It doesn't really matter what we call it as long as it interests the public.
I think what we need to do is to find out what the public wants. What's our perspective base? And go ahead, finish your comments, and then I'll
Okay, the question I have is sort of the reverse. As we go out looking for sponsors for square dance programs after we've done our market research and whatnot, are we going to be careful who we pick and choose as sponsors and what kind of image they have in the market? And I'd like to give a for instance. It hasn't been all that long ago, and I know some people who talk on the square dance callers list on the web were discussing this. I saw an ad on TV, and there's this fellow up on stage calling away. I don't know if he's a professional caller or an actor or who he was. I've never seen him before. But he's calling away, and the next thing you know, he's looking right in the camera, and he says, "Imagine that, calling a whole square dance without my teeth falling out." And it's an ad for Polygrip or Polydent or some doggone thing like that, and I'm thinking to myself, what kind of image, what little advertising we have out there, what sort of image are we giving to the public? And I'd like to say to the membership, I don't know if the person who did that is in here or not, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I'll tell you what, I understand that if somebody came to you and said, "We'd like you to make a commercial that's going to be on national television," that's really flattering, and it really wouldn't matter probably even to me what these people were selling. I'd go, "Really? I get to be on national TV? Wow, that's so cool." But think about it twice and think about what the image, what is this product that they want you to sell using square dancing as a vehicle? And does it fit with the image we're trying to put out as well? If we're going to get free mileage off of somebody else's ad, they're trying to sell a product, let's try to sell square dancing along with it instead of damaging it.
Very good. Well said.
Greg Shucker, Costa Mesa, California. Just mentioned that. Easier. You just mentioned as far as some people don't want to think at all. Well, you also have the other side where people do want to think, and it's not just the young people, it's the old people. And I don't think it's so much a fact that we have a problem with deciding which one. I think there's room for both. I think it's a problem of lack of advertising correctly. We don't really have a way to say that this is something where we're dancing a particular list, but we're not thinking, or we are thinking. Because I see plenty, let's use advanced as the example. I see plenty of advanced dances that are typically plus dances called the typical way, and they throw in a few advanced calls. On the other side, you see advanced where they're blowing the people off the floor, and those people enjoy it because they want to, the caller will do it again, and they succeed. And so for them, it's a matter of a challenge. The problem is we don't advertise it that way, and so you have some of these people that don't want to think. They just want to do what they've always done. They go out to a dance, get blown away, and they blame the callers. And vice versa. You've got some people that say, go to an advanced dance, and they say, they didn't do anything at all. That was the most boring thing I've ever been to. And I think, I've seen this all the way along, and even in the teaching. They say we're teaching this, and you go out and look at them, they're not teaching it at all.
I think you point out a very good point that Jim had made earlier, that we have a range of products. And one of the things this will help us to do, as well as tabulating our own population of dancers, is to understand how we can cater or arrange this product so that we can meet the needs of more people. And as you said, Craig, clearly define or better define our dances and our sessions so that the people can attend the areas and the sessions that they want to attend.
I think it's also important for beginning dancers to recognize that there are separate paths on the way up.
And as callers and leaders, I think it's important for us to help guide the dancers. We have a perfect opportunity, soapbox-wise, to sit up there on the mic and do that with our new dancers and educate them on what's out there. And it's really easy to do when you're teaching your dancers.
There's one other point that people were bringing up as far as the clubs. Really, it's become really apparent to me as I've gone to clubs lately. You go out to clubs, half of the people sit around the entire dance with their own friends on the sidelines, and we're trying to socialize only with their own people, but not with the guests, but they want the guests to come because it helps pay for the caller. It just does not make a good impression either on the guests or non-dancers or dancers. As leaders, we need to tell the clubs, if you're going to just sit, you may as well just go home. Don't.
Actually, the point that Craig is trying to make, that anything that we can do as leaders to promote socialization with our dancers and at our dances is going to just help our activity all that much more. And I think you're right in that, Craig. There are, and the clubs that seem to have the vehicle and have the ideas that promote socialization, that go out and treat their guests as if they were guests in their own home, are the clubs that are succeeding today. The clubs that you talk about that don't socialize and that have those are the clubs that are having problems.
Well, one thing in particular, I went to one club. There was several people. They all sat at one table for the entire dance. They never got up. They never danced. They never talked to anybody but their own people. We realize that's a problem. I think, as I said in closing here, Craig, one of the things that we need to do is to, as leaders, help advise those clubs if they don't have a club caller. And if they do have a club caller, let's work with that club caller and let's see how we can promote the socialization. Cal?
Yes. I think most of you know most of what I do at this point in my calling career is to call parties. And I've been doing a lot of parties for 40-some years. To give you some sort of perspective of the size of the body of people that's out there who have experience with square dancing but are not mainstream Western square dancers. In the Denver area, we have a pretty good idea of how many people are actually dancing because of the insurance situation. There are 5 of us in the Denver, Colorado Springs area that probably do 90% of the one-night stands. The number of people that we typically call for collectively between the 5 of us in a year's period of time is somewhere between 6 and 10 times the population of modern Western square dancers. Every year. We get the same people back. We're the front line of introduction to these places. I've been doing this in the Denver area for 20 years. I have yet to see a modern Western square dancer at one of my parties. Okay? I have yet to see a modern Western square dancer at one of my parties. I know they go to the churches. I know they have children. But you never see them at one of my parties. They don't get any chance for an exposure. But the thing is, you need to realize that we're within modern Western square dancing. We look at all these lovely people that we do have and we cherish them greatly. But please realize that we are a small fish in a very, very big puddle.
Very good, Cal. Hey, one more comment Jim would like to make regarding that commercial that was mentioned earlier. Jim? On the mic. You got it. No, get out of here. Tape.
Yeah, I hear you. That Paladin thing, I monitor about 30 to 40 of these discussion lists every day as part of my educational process, and I do remember that. But I also remember, very interestingly enough, and I hope the party who presented this remembers it, there was a really nice answer on that mention, and that was that, look, this was a relatively young man, relatively young. He was a nice, attractive man. The people behind him were actually younger than the average age of most square dancers today. And the fact of the matter is that it did present square dancing in not a bad way at all. The fact that we had a product tied to it, and of course this is not what we have in mind when we talk about sponsors. We talk about national sponsors like a Coca-Cola or a Ford Motor Company or someone like that, with whom obviously we're not going to ever associate this product. It wouldn't make any sense to associate it with an inappropriate sponsor. They wouldn't want us and we wouldn't want them, because what we're selling is this all-American, traditional, this is the thing that people every once in a while like to get back to with their products. And when they do, major companies do, they do it for a long-range thing. One of the things I mentioned, or I didn't mention this morning, that sponsorship is going through an interesting third phase. Sponsorship is a new business. It's only about 10 years old. And initially, everybody just wanted, okay, we're going to sponsor this golf tournament. How many million people are going to see it? How much cost per thousand? And they call them signatures. How many signatures we can get? Bang, bang, bang. We wouldn't even have been considered as a prospect for that. Second phase, they changed a little bit, and they started to look at it from more than just an event kind of phenomena. And they started looking at it maybe 2 or 3 times a year, or this or that or whatever. The third phase, which is just starting to move in, is that for the first time they're not just looking at signature numbers, but what's the overall image of my company, and what's the overall image in history, and what kind of people are these people out here in this activity? Who are they, and what do they do, and what do they stand for, and how do they vote, and what do they think about, and what's the character quality? That's what I'd like to have my company be seen as, so the association is there. For the first time ever, in the next year to 2 years, when we're going to be ready to do this, I think sponsorship is going to be ready for us, which is a really critical thing. It's almost serendipitous in terms of the timing on this thing. Really interesting. So I don't know that the Polydent grip ad was bad for square dancing. In reading this answer, I happen to think it may have been good. So don't think just because... No, the first time I saw it, I said the same thing. God, I want younger people. God, I wish this guy... boom, I wish it was... whatever. Where's Tony when you need him? But the point is that not everything is bad. There were 8 bottles of Budweiser a few years back that were doing a kind of square dance routine, and everybody had a terrible attack, and I guess they put the pressure out and they dropped it. Well, I don't even know if those 4 bottles was bad. I mean, if we don't want to be associated with beer, I agree with you. But what you got to remember is that you want to get that image of what you really do and who you really are. See, there is such a gap between people who don't square dance and what they think you do. You know, I'm reminded of what the early Christians thought, the non-Christians thought of what was going on in those damn catacombs. And you know what I'm talking about? And people are doing really weird things, you know. And the image difference between what really went on in those catacombs and what the average Roman thought was going on, or even non-Roman thought, was a big gap. And that's the same kind of gap we have. So as long as it's not real bad and it's pretty accurate, it ain't all bad, folks. I just want to say that.
Yes.
Yes, you can hear me? Some of you callers probably still have the record, It's a Small World, and you use it for a singing call. Well, if we put that concept into our thinking and realize that it really is a small world, and there is a wealth of multi-ethnic dancers we have not reached. If you want more people, look in that direction. There are your future dancers. The world is becoming homogenized. And when we put that in our thinking, we can put that in our long-range plan as well.
Well said.
So, thank you.
Well said. Thank you. Don?
Yeah, we're really excited in Washington about, I'm Don from Walla Walla, Washington, about the new marketing program. But what we have to do is, I remember dancing to a young girl, now she's old, Gail Seastrom. Anyway, what we have to do is when we go back to your cities, get a hold of your newspapers, and when they do an article on square dancing, make sure they don't show the geriatric beds and the oxygen tents and things like that, because every time somebody gets an image of square dancing that's been promoted, and I am retiring from the newspaper business Friday, make sure they do show the images of the younger people. It's not that we don't want old people, but when you go out and ask somebody, they say, well, my grandma and grandpa used to do that, but I would never do it. So when they do an article, it's easy to get a hold of the editor, make sure they promote and take pictures of the young people and not in the nursing homes. Okay?
Hi. Michael McMullen from Portland, Oregon. The reference earlier was brought up to people having fun or not having fun. I worked with a club where I had the club president coming up to me and saying that Wednesday nights, which were our class nights, aren't fun. I said to her, well, what do you mean they're not fun? They're just not fun. I couldn't press her to give me a definition of what various people were complaining about. So, of course, if you don't know what's wrong, you can't fix it. Problems with making sure people have fun is everybody has a different idea. And I sort of divide it into 3 groups. There's the people who don't want to think. They just want to come in, dance the same old basic dance routines they're comfortable with. There are the people that want to think a little bit, stretch them just a little. And then there's the 3rd group, the people who want to think for 2 hours about something that has nothing to do with reality. This is their stress management. They forget about the kids, they forget about work, they forget about the taxes. And these people exist at all levels, from basic all the way through challenge. And we need to figure out how to divide our programs or advertise our dances. As somebody else said, that in a good way, this is a non-thinking dance. This is forget about the stress at work dance, so they have some idea of what they're showing up at. Another point somebody talked about is it's less costly to retain dancers. I think that's part of our problem. We've focused on retaining dancers. Our dancers are getting older. They drop out because of health problems. One of my younger dancers has decided that the average half-life of a dancer is 3 to 6 years. If you don't constantly spend lots of dollars to recruit, you're not going to have dancers to retain. You've got to be constantly selling your product and repackaging it. As the man said, one-a-day vitamins, there are now 15 variety of one-a-day vitamins. Baking soda. Think of all the uses that you now hear for good old plain baking soda. Constantly repackage, constantly reinvent. Make the product relevant to your new people. Thanks.
Very good. Yes.
I'm Lynn Webster, and I come from the Twin Cities area. I'm a new caller. A couple things I have to say. I've heard a lot of things. If it wasn't for the challenge level, C3, C4, I probably wouldn't be square dancing today. But I also know a lot of people have dropped out of square dancing because it's been too hard or the choreography really stresses them. So as callers, we need to know what's out there, and if you have a dancer that's saying, well, this is too easy for me, direct them to the advanced and challenge level. If you've got a dancer that's saying it's too hard for me, tell them where they can go take a basic dance or go to a mainstream caller that's a real fun, easy level caller. Also, we need to look at health and wellness within major corporations. A lot of corporations are looking at developing health and wellness programs, and we can get square dancing in there, tell them it's fun, it's good, it's a stress reliever, and we can get there. I know when I started square dancing in '82, two of the major corporations in the Twin Cities, Honeywell and 3M, had two square dance clubs. Both of them had a square dance club that promoted square dancing and did it through their corporation, and a lot of the members are still square dancing today that started out through 3M and Honeywell. So thank you.
Yes.
Yona Chalk again. One thing we need to do is vet our language. They have been using words like path, up, higher, levels. If we're going to sell one-a-day vitamins as square dancing, we need to get rid of all of the references to one-a-day vitamins with iron are better than one-a-day vitamins without iron. Square dancing is good for you no matter what form it comes in. Get rid of all reference to levels or better or higher. We're not on a path to go up. We're dancing.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. This has been a pet peeve of mine for a long, long time because many, many years ago, CALLERLAB changed all of our publications. There's no longer anything we call level. It's always program. But boy, some terms are hard to lose, aren't they? Round Lab, you guys are. Some terms are hard, but and it gets even down to our beginners. I mean, how many are still calling your beginners? We've stopped calling beginners for a long time. They're new dancers. They're not classes. They're dances. New dancer dances. It's a little thing, but boy, to some people and in today's marketplace, it means a lot. So we need to be thinking about our terminology a little bit. Yes.
Betsy Gotta from New Jersey. And they'll never believe that we didn't all collaborate in this, because that is also what I'm speaking to, is the terms that we talk about. One of the phrases that drives me up the wall, and my friends know this, is the phrase that I've heard dancers use to the members of the class: when you graduate and become a square dancer. Excuse me, but what are they doing on my floor to music now? As soon as they step on that floor for the first beat, they're square dancers to me. All of us as leaders need to change our thinking to make sure that we accept the occasional once-a-year square dancer as a square dancer. They are a square dancer at a non-CALLERLAB recognized program, so to speak, but they are still a square dancer, and we need to start we need to think of this in our own minds, and then we can convey it to the club square dancers to get their minds changed.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you. Mike?
Mike Jacobs. It seems to me we're trying to pick apart different aspects. We're almost turning on ourselves here. The fact that we're all in here shows that we have more in common than anybody at one of those slot machines out there. I have much more in common with Yona because we're both interested in this activity. We need to concentrate on what unifies us, not what separates us. As we talk to each other, see what we have in common first. I think we'll find a lot more than that, than whether we like challenge dancing or like traditional dancing. We like dancing. Let's concentrate on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jason?
Thank you, Mike. Jason Dean from Australia. I'd just like to raise a couple of points as to the focus of what we've been certainly doing at my clubs. I call for 4 groups. a mixture of committee-run groups and groups that I run myself. We had been running beginners, shall I rephrase that, shall I say new dancer groups, for a number of years. And one thing was clear to me, that I needed to refocus my product. Now, in the last 2 years, I haven't run beginners classes, and that's not because I haven't wanted to. My passion is marketing the activity, promoting to new dancers, and the growth of the activity. But it became clear to me that the product that I was pushing to the dancers wasn't conducive to new people. So basically, what I've done is I've looked at it from what's my product? How am I going to retain my dancers? And we certainly have refocused our attitudes on retaining the dancers that we have. And as a result, we've actually increased our memberships of all our groups. We've had people come back to us that have left for one reason or another. And just by focusing on the product, making our clubs and our dancers in our area the best that we can possibly get them, then hopefully people will come back the next week. So by doing that, we've actually increased our membership as a result. By looking at the product of square dancing overall, which is obviously what this marketing committee is going to do, I think we need to all focus our attention on marketing at our club level, at the lowest level, making our collective clubs, I mean we all call for clubs, most of us call for clubs, looking at that level and being united in our focus on our product and making sure that what we provide is the best that we can provide, so that so that a dancer doesn't go somewhere else, so that they don't say, well, line dancing, even though it's more expensive, I prefer to do that. Make our product the best we can get it at a club level. I'd like to, Mike mentioned before that we actually did a market study in Australia 2 years ago, which actually involved Laurel Eddy Mosley when she was chairman. Now, this was initiated by the Sydney area, the New South Wales area, and they decided to approach a marketing company, much the same as what CALLERLAB is intending to do with the Phoenix program. It was very beneficial, not only in determining where the direction of square dancing is going in Australia, but it was beneficial in finding out what people think of square dancing at home as well. And whilst we may not have a united front as far as the callers and the clubs are concerned, we're certainly on the way to doing that. The next phase, we're actually in the next phase of the marketing program and involving more of the states in Australia to contribute to a national marketing program. But we went through the market research and found some extraordinary things. We asked people basically questions surrounding the 4 P's of marketing. We asked them where would they prefer to dance, at what times would they prefer to dance, under what circumstances would they prefer to dance. And one of the interesting things, if I may just state one of the findings that came out of it, I don't obviously have concrete data with me, but
Jason, I've got that information if you want me to read it. Yeah, they said that of those surveyed, 45% said they would go square dancing, they would give it a try if it was at a suitable time. And the preferred time for classes and social dancing, 70% said early evening or soon after work. That's 7 to 9 p.m. Only 15% of the prospects are prepared to take it up between 8 and 10. The preferred venue, you can speak to the preferred, that's kind of interesting.
The preferred venue was very interesting in the fact that people would prefer to dance at a place where they can, say, come from work, they can have a meal, they can do their recreation, get their exercise, and finish at a reasonable hour. So that was very interesting.
Yeah, like 70% said something like they preferred air-conditioned clubs where there was fairly low-cost food, like sports clubs and that kind of thing. Whereas only 10% that said that they would be happy with church halls, and maybe 20% happy with school halls.
And we sort of
Tremendous difference.
We looked at that statistic and we thought, where are we dancing at the moment? We're dancing in schools, church halls. You know, I don't know what the situation is here, but certainly at home we dance in church halls, we dance in schools because of the price of the venue, because a lot of the other places are too expensive. But if we're sort of to refocus our attitudes about our product and who would be more likely to come to our square dance activity, then we've got to cater to that. And if it means dancing in a different place, if it means providing a meal, if it means starting a bit earlier, then maybe we're on the right track.
Well said, Jason. Yes.
Thank you.
You know, the interesting thing that brings up is there's a tremendous number of sports clubs being built in our cities all across the country, and many of those sports clubs do quite well and appeal to a certain population. Others of those sports clubs are having little problems getting activities in those clubs, and this may be just a perfect avenue for us to get additional halls and to form partnerships with those groups that need us.
Bill Barner, Linville, Texas. I wasn't at CALLERLAB in 74, but I was there in 75, and I've seen a lot of things go under the bridge since then. My wife and I started dancing in 1967, and at that time, the dancers were all our age. I was 35 at that time. Last week, I turned 68, and we look at the dancers now, and they're still our age. All the dancers are our age, and have been that way for 33 years. Last week, we danced, I called one dance last week, and we went and danced 4 times. The thing about it is, you start talking about marketing, and you start talking about asking people what they want. The way I see the thing is that we've become a society of not participants, but spectators. The people, and I talk about the alphabet soup all the time. It used to be ABC and NBC and CBS. Now it's C-SPAN and ESPN and Fox and AMC and on and on and on, ad infinitum. People just don't participate anymore. It's too easy for them to be spectators. I don't know how you're going to research something like that, because I have an idea that if you came and asked me, and I wasn't a dancer, what could we do to get you interested in square dancing? And I was one of these spectators. I say put it on cable so I could see it. Okay. So we have to find. My opinion is we have to find a way to convert our society back from a society of spectators into a society of participants. Thank you. That's good.
Okay. 2 more comments, and then we're going to wrap it up and go to lunch. Glenn.
Glenn Nichols. I taught chemistry at Golden West College in Huntington Beach. Now remember, this is the 70s. In 1971, we started with a class of 25 students. The next class, there were 42. They moved us to the student center, where everybody came to take their breaks. By the time we finished, because we had a disagreement with the administration, and that's one of the problems with square dancing in schools, is the administration, we had 18 squares of beginners and 15 squares of intermediates. Our dance that we first held was 27 squares. The highest dance that we held on campus was 61 squares. I now have a student in one of my classes whose father was in the original class back in 1971. We're missing a point. There are 108 junior colleges, community colleges in California, and every one of them should have a square dance class. One of the University of California, Los Angeles colleges has 24 dance programs. Belly dancing, this dancing, that dancing, and everything else. Not one square dance program. Every junior college and community college in the United States should have a square dance program, and I hope that marketing is headed in that direction. Every recreation department in every city in California has all kinds of dancing. Fountain Valley has 7 different kinds of dancing. No square dancing program. There are 2 areas they need to go after.
Very good, Glenn, because this ties in definitely with Jim Wass's program that he mentioned earlier. This kind of thing is the thing that we need. Not everybody has a degree or a PhD or that kind of thing after their name to get into a college, and these certification programs that CALLERLAB is looking at right now is a vehicle to begin that same kind of thing. Yes, one more.
Sean Cuddy, Acton, Massachusetts. First of all, Jim and the board of CALLERLAB, I'd like to thank you for leading us through a discovery process. Marketing not only defines a product, but it defines your organization. As such, we all need to think about what the value proposition is that we have to offer, not just from program to program. Is it the basic program? Is it the contra program? Is it all of square dancing, that umbrella value proposition? But each of us as individuals, when we're speaking to our audiences, what's the value that you're bringing that evening when you're communicating with them? We're getting caught up in a lot of the messaging that needs to be done here, and we need to make some definitions in each area. The Plus program, their target audience is the mainstream dancer. That message is very different from the external audience, the new dancer who's never joined us yet, which is also very different from CALLERLAB marketing to a corporation. The messaging that needs to go on there is very different. So one of the action items that we could walk away from this session with is in each of our subcommittees defining what that value proposition is. Who's the target? What's the competitive frame of reference? What are they considering? What are the benefits of your program? And what are the supporting statements that you can offer to back up that value proposition? Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the morning session. If you have individual questions, please talk to Jim or I or members of the board. We're excited about this. We need you. We need you to bring in the other factions of this activity. We need to work together. We need to keep an open mind, and above all, have a little bit of a tolerance and enjoy the passion that we all share for dancing. Thank you.